Today, let's talk about a fringe presser foot and how to use it. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are talking about a fringe presser foot. Now, a fringe presser foot's a little bit interesting. You see you have this bar in the middle, and the idea is that this is going to help you create very loose stitches that then you could turn into fringe if you would like. So this was actually the very first time I had ever used this foot, but I wanted to find out more. So when we compare it to our regular presser foot, you can see that it's slightly smaller. It's about 1 inch by 1 inch, and then our regular presser foot's normally a little bit longer. A lot of different shapes going on. The bottom of our presser foot for the fringe foot also has more of a groove, and that is because we are doing those big stitches. So you're going to see it's almost like big loops that are coming out from the stitch. And then you also have that bar on top, which is something we're really going to pay attention to when we install it on our machine. Now, compared to our regular presser foot, there is some sizing, but these are just clip-ins, so very easy to install. So I'm going to remove my regular presser foot now, just pressing that black button, and then install the fringe foot, so just pushing it up and then getting it clipped in. And now we need to set up our machine to be able to use this properly. So the first thing is, for this foot, you are going to use a zigzag stitch. So you can see we have that bar in the middle. We want to use that zigzag stitch because the needle's going to be going back and forth over the bar. Now we also need to adjust the stitch length and the stitch width. So first I'm going to do the width. So on mine you can see like it just shows 3.5. I'm going to up this to around 5. You could go anywhere from 5 to 7. And then for the stitch length, you're going to want to make this small. So you could do 0.5, you could do 0.6, 0.7. You want to make it very tight though, so that you can get a lot of these little loops. And then to really get this to work, we are going to want this to be a very loose stitch. So we are going to be adjusting the tension. You want to lower your tension on your machine. So I know here that I only did it to around like a 2. You could do lower if you would like though. Now the last step is you want to be sure that your needle is not hitting that bar in the middle. I will say that my machine automatically just was not hitting it. I did do a couple test rounds just to be sure, but if you run into any issues, you could definitely use a screwdriver just to try to push that bar down a little bit. And then once you have everything set up, you can begin sewing. So I'm just going to be taking some stitches, and what I'm noticing is you can see you're getting these loops that are appearing. So these very loose stitches are coming back and forth, and this is what it looks like. So it's almost like a little bump. You could leave it like this if you wanted to. You could use this for decorative threads and just have like a little decoration. But I'm going to try to do a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you how you can turn this into fringe. So I'm going to do a larger section here, just continue sewing all the way down. And then once I am finished with that sewing, I'm then going to take this off the sewing machine, and you're going to see that we have a lot more little loops now to work with. So lots of little loops. And what we're going to be doing is now taking a straight seam on very close to one of the edges. So I'm going to do it on this like left edge and just take a straight seam all the way down. So for this, you will need to take off that fringe foot, put your regular presser foot back on, switch to a straight stitch, and then adjust your tension. So that is the only one downfall, is you do need to sort of change everything back to its normal state again to do this. But once you have it all set up, I'm now just going to take that straight stitch on one side. And what we're doing is basically securing those loops in place. And then once you get them all nice and secure, we can then just go through. If you have like a tiny pair of scissors, you could use that to sort of cut these loops. I did not, so this was like one of those times where I realized that there is like a tiny little tool that I don't have. So I used a seam ripper, which this did work, like it gave me that fringe effect, but definitely I think if you had those little scissors, it'd probably be a lot easier. But what this is doing is just creating little fringe for us. So really fun little loose fringe. And you could use this for decoration. You could add this to like a little shirt. Lots of different ways that you could use this if you wanted. Now I did try to do this with a little bit of darker thread just so it's easier for you to see. And one of the things I start to notice, especially when you're using thread with a lot more contrast, is it can almost look like you don't have enough fringe. So I did look up some ways that you could make this thicker. One, you could actually go through this a second time if you wanted. So doing 2 of those looped layers. Another option is you could make the stitch length smaller. I do think that would take a lot longer, but it's an option. And then third, you could use thicker thread just so it's a little more full. I think that this is an interesting presser foot, and I definitely want to look into it a little bit more, but let me know your thoughts and if you've used it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.